I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about weight loss. If you're on the fertility journey, you may have been told to lose weight, perhaps for IVF, perhaps to improve the chances of getting pregnant naturally. And you may have already tried a lot of things to lose the weight, but it's not working. So today, instead of just focusing in on the weight, we're going to look at the other health biomarkers in your body, what could be missed, and really this can end the frustration and the self-blaming that we have that, like, why is this not working to lose the weight? And then obviously we're here to help you improve the chances of pregnancy success. Excited for you to listen to this episode. Let's go. Hey, Louise. Nice to have you on the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Great. Can you share with us how you came to do this work?
Well, I qualified in nutrition in 2012. And when I first started practicing, I was kind of working with everyone and anyone who had anything, whether that was diabetes or chronic fatigue or fertility issues or you name it. And then what I found was that for pretty much everyone that I worked with, they all seemed to want to lose weight. And so I ended up learning a lot about weight loss as I went along. But what I found was that, particularly for women, and often after the age of 35, weight loss suddenly becomes a lot more tricky. And the typical diets that might have worked when they're in their 20s just seem to stop working in the same way. And I noticed that it was the clients that were really trying their hardest who were having the least success when it came to weight loss. But it was the other clients who were coming for other things, for IBS or for chronic fatigue, and who were working on their kind of foundational nutritional health that were getting really good results with weight loss. So that led me down the path of specializing in weight loss and taking a much more holistic approach. And rather than focusing on how much people are eating and how much they're exercising, instead look at what's actually going on in their bodies and, what's going on with their hormones, their inflammation, their gut health, their toxic load and intolerances, and all these things have a really big impact on the way that our bodies burn fat and the way that our metabolisms run. So that's kind of how I got into it, through having that frustration with some clients who just weren't getting the results that we were expecting.
Yeah. And a lot of times where people, like people on the fertility journey, we don't go head first if someone's having like weight issues, but when they start working on all the foundational pillars of the diet, rest, sleep, we do testing and all that piece, and the weight becomes a nice side effect of that, but not like attacking the weight dead on. And so let's just kind of talk about, and so sometimes people that have been recommended for IVF, typically if their BMI is too high, they won't even do IVF. So they've been sent away to say, hey, you need to go and lose some weight. We're typically working with people that have diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency, low AMH, and or high FSH. And so, and a lot of times they've been told IVF's the only way, or they've been told, donor eggs. Obviously, we're helping them get pregnant naturally, we think the fast track is IVF and donor eggs, but I see people doing like 20 IVFs and multiple donor eggs, nothing's working. So the fast track is always your health. So let's just talk about kind of the hormonal imbalance and how that can be connected to weight loss. And sometimes we're like blaming ourselves and, what have I done wrong? I'm doing all this stuff. And many times we see people aren't even eating enough. So yeah, what are you seeing there with the hormone balance?
Yeah, I mean, I see people not eating enough all the time. People come in on these really restrictive diets, often doing like the fast 800, and, more often than not getting people to eat more because they're just so undernourished. And when you are undernourishing and you're undereating, that has a big knock-on effect on your hormones. And I think hormones it goes both ways. Sometimes hormones can take the blame entirely and, it can kind of be a bit of a scapegoat. But also, I think hormones have been talked about so much in the nutrition space recently that I think it's getting a little bit twisted as to how much hormones are involved. But they do have a big role, because when we talk about hormones, often most people think about sex hormones, but there's so many different sets of hormones in the body. As well as your sex hormones, there's your thyroid hormones, your blood sugar hormones, your hunger hormones, all your brain chemicals. And all of these things are involved in the way that we process the fuel coming into our body, how we utilize the stores of fuel and energy in our body to make energy and burn fat. So, for example, if you have an imbalance in your thyroid, that is going to slow everything down in your body, every chemical reaction, including the chemical reaction that happens in your mitochondria where you are burning fat or making energy. If you have imbalances in your blood sugars, then that is going to basically make it more difficult for you to get into fat burning mode. Your body's going to be in fat storage mode when your blood sugars are too high, because your insulin is going to be too high. And your estrogen levels play a big role as well. If your estrogen's not in balance, then that can have a knock-on effect on your insulin. And then we've got the stress hormones as well. And that has a big impact on everything. If your cortisol levels are raised, then all those hormones that I've mentioned and more will be disrupted in some way. And so when you're working with someone who's got potentially multiple imbalances going on, and most people that I work with do have multiple things going on, it's not just one thing, like just your thyroid or just your sex hormones. When someone's got multiple things going on, it's a case of working with someone as a whole and, working with all those things rather than kind of the typical conventional approach to, illnesses, which is, okay, well, let's refer you off to an endocrinologist for your hormones, and let's refer you off to a gastroenterologist for your gut issues. We need to look at everything together to be able to address these issues properly and really get to the root cause.
Yeah, it becomes that very siloed thing where you're like, "Ooh, I got a rash. I'm going to the dermatologist. I got digestive issues. I'm going to the gastroenterologist. I'm gonna, I've got, mental emotional stuff. I'm heading down to the psychiatrist." So it's like, wait a minute. Let's look at the health of your gut. Let's look at, your whole body as a whole. And sometimes you may need some of those specialists, but otherwise it's just like this siloed approach, and you're chasing symptoms, and you never actually get to exactly what the heck's going on here.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so let's talk about, because many people get very focused on their BMI. So what are you seeing there with BMI, and maybe why is this not the best measurement?
Yeah, it's definitely not the best measurement, because your BMI is just looking at your overall weight. And, we need to remember that your weight encompasses quite a few different things. It's not just how much fat you have, but also how much muscle you have, and bone and connective tissue and all these other things. And, often someone can have quite a good muscle mass, but they're being told that their BMI is too high. And, it's not giving a very good representation of your actual, health and well-being. So BMI doesn't necessarily correlate with being healthy. And it's interesting because I was actually talking to someone about this the other day. And even though they know that BMI is not a good marker of, body composition, and even though they know that they are quite muscular and they don't really have a lot of fat to lose, when they did the calculation just out of curiosity, it said that they were obese, and they were mortified. And they're like, "Oh God, I've got to go on a diet." And it was like, "No, you're great. Like, look at you. You're healthy. You're muscular. We shouldn't be using BMI to decide whether or not we need to be, going on a diet. I mean, we should never be going on a diet. But we definitely shouldn't be basing that on our BMI."
Yeah, because that kind of, I think people then, like people that listen to this podcast, their FSH numbers and their AMH numbers are memorized. People also have their BMI memorized. And being like, okay, most people that have it's not their first kick at trying to lose weight if they're trying to do it. So maybe for someone who's tried everything to lose weight, especially when you're on the fertility journey, and maybe you've been told you have to lose the weight, or you can't do IVF, or like carrying a pregnancy, there might be, like there's a higher risk of, um, issues in in the pregnancy with the health of your child. So we know you want to be in a healthy range there. But like, what if someone's tried everything to lose the weight? Where should we start?
I think testing is a really good place to start if you have the means to do it, and starting to investigate what's going on in your body at a deeper level than just what your doctors will screen you for. I mean, over here in the UK, your doctors will do a very basic thyroid test, some very basic vitamin tests, and then they might look at your cholesterol and your liver function. Again, a pretty basic assessment, and then they'll give you the impression that you've had quite a detailed run of tests, but actually it's doesn't tell us anything. So getting a deeper assessment of, a full thyroid panel and what's going on with your hormones, and do you have inflammation, and is your gut functioning properly? In an ideal world, that's a really great place to start, because there's so much information out there and so many different things that you could do and different areas that you could focus on, that oftentimes it's a lot of wasted energy and effort. You might be trying to work on balancing your sex hormones, but maybe that isn't even a problem at all. Maybe it's actually a problem in your gut that is causing inflammation or causing you to recycle your hormones around your body when you should be eliminating them. So it's getting some tests done is ideal. If you don't have the means to be doing testing, then I think focusing on what your body needs and adding stuff in, as opposed to the approach that most people go down, which is, what do I need to cut out? Let's chop out carbs, let's chop out fat, or let's, get a small plate and just eat tiny meals. That is almost certainly going to leave you lacking in vital nutrients and, oftentimes entire food groups, which are all essential. Particularly when it comes to carbohydrates, they get such a bad rap, and, people cut them out willy-nilly, but they're so important for ensuring that your thyroid is functioning properly, and that your brain has enough fuel as well. And, if you're active and if you're, moving your body regularly, then you're going to need some carbs to fuel your thyroid and to fuel your brain. And, there's a similar argument for all of the food groups. They're all essential. So focusing on making sure that you are just getting every element in your diet, and that you're making your food choices based on what your body needs, as opposed to just trying to chop things out and eat less.
Yeah, because you're taking those things out. Like I've done some of those in the past where I was like, oh, I'm going to do what was it? It was some sort of, I think it was some sort of juice fast. I was like, let me try one of these. And I don't normally have crazy cravings. At the end of that, I literally, here I am in Canada, I wanted to go to Tim Hortons. I don't go there because I can't eat any of that stuff. It's junk. But I literally wanted to go there and like eat. I had vicious cravings for like huge amount of donuts. I was like, if I could just go there and eat, and usually I don't have, but whatever happened on that cleanse, I was like, this is craziness. So it's like it set off some sort of craving thing in me. And so like when you're satiated and you have enough proteins and fats, you don't have this crazy cravings for all this, junk that we all probably used to eat at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of talk about food sensitivities, and then how like people, they're doing the fasting piece, and they're, eating what is a seemingly healthy foods. First of all, they may not be eating enough. And maybe some of these foods, they could be sensitive to it, and then that could be causing inflammation. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think fasting is interesting, and often people can feel better doing fasting. I think it's an interesting point that you've raised, is that if you've got food sensitivities, then you're probably going to feel better if you're eating less food, because there's going to be less reactivity going on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that fasting is going to align with your health goals, because if you are not eating enough, and if you're someone who is quite stressed and your adrenals are working really hard, then fasting can put more burden on your body and cause a real stress response. And even though it should help you to lose weight in theory because you're eating less and eating less often, actually it can have the opposite effect, and it can make you cling on to fat. It can make you more inflamed and more stressed. And that's not helpful when you want to lose weight. It's not helpful when you want to conceive either. So you do have to be very cautious about fasting. When I work with people, if we do fasting, we bring it in once we've been working with them for months, because we want to have a really solid nutrition foundation in place. We want to make sure the adrenals are well supported and that the thyroid is well supported before we're starting to add an extra layer that could potentially make you go backwards. So yeah, always really cautious around that.
Yeah, our whole thesis on people that have low AMH or high FSH, or, diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency, is it actually early menopause, or is it your adrenals? Adrenals affect the thyroid, and then your AMH, FSH, and the follicle count. So we see thyroid issues across the board. I just did a Q&A just a little while ago talking all about some of the symptoms of adrenal function. People are like, yeah, me. So it's, those salt cravings and sugar cravings and sleep issues and PMS symptoms, and even signs of perimenopause. So and then the body can hold on to those foods, and then may not be able to lose the weight. Anything you wanted to say about food sensitivities, kind of in particular, like what is anything you're seeing there, like a theme or anything?
I think we often see, like gluten and dairy are so common. There's such common sensitivities. And I'm always cautious to kind of give a blanket recommendation of cutting out gluten and dairy, because actually some people do just fine on them. But it is really common. And when we can at least reduce the amount in someone's diet, it does seem to make a big impact on their blood sugar control, on their levels of inflammation, on things like cravings. It seems to be the things that we're more sensitive to, that we actually end up craving and eating more of. But once you can get them out, it does seem to really help to regulate cravings and get someone on a more even keel. But I think with a lot of sensitivities, they're not necessarily permanent. And if you can work on the gut and you can get the gut lining healthy and get the bacteria balanced, then you might only need to avoid a food for a short amount of time. And then often it can be gradually reintroduced and well tolerated. Now, obviously, if you have a true allergy, or if you have celiac disease, then that isn't the case. But, if it's more of a food sensitivity, then it's a possibility that it could be brought back in with the right gut work.
Yeah, we have people do an elimination diet, taking out the top allergens and then systematically reintroducing them over the course of 30 days. And we see a theme of non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So it's not about, if it is super high on the food sensitivity test, but there's a lot of false negatives. And then with the test. And so we have people do, obviously in conjunction, doing the stool testing, right? Because it's not about taking these foods out forever. Like if you're intolerant to lettuce, it doesn't mean you'll never be able to eat lettuce again. Like I remember doing a food sensitivity test and the whole thing was lit up with all my favorite foods. I'm like, are you kidding me? But then as I healed my gut, I could bring back in most of the foods. And sometimes people are, doing all this. What's your thought on like doing all this? Obviously for fertility, we don't recommend vigorous exercise, right? But I got people that are like, I'm working out 6 or 7 days a week. And I'm, looking at their diet, and then the weight still isn't shifting. Like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, and much like under eating, want to make sure that we're not over exercising, right? And as well as most of our new clients, we're telling them to eat more, we're also telling them to exercise less, because again, it's the people who seem to be trying the hardest with the least calories and the most exercise that get the least or the worst results. And actually, when we scale back the exercise, we start seeing weight loss. And sometimes it's doing less, sometimes it's doing more gentle exercise. But if we're doing loads and loads of cardio, then it just can drive up those stress hormones. Particularly, I think if you're doing sessions that are longer than like 20, 30 minutes, short bouts of cardio seem to be fine. But when it's starting to go longer than 30 minutes or so, that's when your glycogen stores are starting to run low. So your sugar stores in your muscle. And that is, a stress situation for your body because its energy reserves are running low. So that is something that we really want to avoid. So we want to keep cardio short. And if we're doing longer cardio, we definitely need to be refueling afterwards and making sure we're having some carbs to drive down that cortisol level.
Yeah, I think and yeah, I guess the kind of also with the blood sugar piece, like what do you see in there with, like, we see a lot of people that have blood sugar imbalance, and that's impacting obviously the ovulation, their cycles. And then you're on this like roller coaster all day long, and then that's making you having these cravings, and sort of maybe they're starting out the day wrong with what they're eating for breakfast. A lot of us, I know me in the past, was like, let's have some muffins and some bagels and things like that. I'm like, why am I hungry a half an hour later? Then you need a little mid-morning snack. And then it's like I've never dealt with weight issues. I'm like 6 foot and whatever. I'm like a giant here. But for me, it's fertility, and people listening to this, obviously, and people on the, fertility journey. And then also if they've got weight issues too, and we start to blame ourselves for all these things. So the thing is, there's steps we can take when we start to understand our own physiology. So what are you seeing kind of with the blood sugar?
Yeah, it's such a common problem. See it in most of our clients. And I kind of like love it because it's so easy to address and it makes such a big difference. If you can get your blood sugars just a little bit more steady, then the cravings come down massively. Your control around food improves. It's much easier to make good food choices because you're not being driven by your blood sugars crashing and you desperately needing some sugar or some carbohydrates to get you out of that sugar crash. So once we can start avoiding those sugar crashes, then suddenly you're in the driver's seat and it's much, much easier to choose, the eggs for breakfast rather than choosing that sugary cereal. But yeah, like getting breakfast right is one of the best things that you can do for your blood sugars, and getting in a protein rich, fat rich, fiber rich breakfast. If you have that and you have enough of it, there's no reason really why you should need a mid-morning snack because it should keep you going unless you're very active or having a really long gap between breakfast and lunch. Getting those blood sugars right helps you to reduce the snacking, and also that kind of like 4 p.m., 5 p.m. kind of like little niggle that comes along where, dinner's coming up, but actually you just cannot resist having something sweet. Often that just goes away if you can get breakfast right.
And what's your go-to breakfast for that? What do you recommend?
I think eggs are always ideal. Having 2 to 3 eggs in the morning, perhaps with some stir-fried veg, avocado. And, if it agrees with you, then some sourdough bread, or it could be some stir-fried potato or something like that. A teeny tiny bit of carb, but mainly want to get some protein and fat in there. So that's ideal. Or something that can be more convenient, which is my personal go-to when I'm busy, is a homemade granola. Just chucking in some flaked almonds, some seeds, some coconut, some nut butter, giving it a good mix up. And you can have it as is, or you can bake it for like half an hour. And it makes a really lovely granola that you can add some berries to, some cacao nibs, have it with some yogurt. And that is a breakfast that keeps me going for hours and hours.
Yeah, those are good. I guess if someone's got issues with, like, because eggs are like a top allergen. So if they got eggs, we like maybe like a sausage patty, or like not sausage, but like beef or lamb, or you can do some sort of patty, and then have the avocado, so like the fat and protein piece.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, or could be fish. Some people like having fish for breakfast.
Yeah, that's a British. And my dad's British, and he was always having kippers. I'm like,
I've never had or seen a kipper. I think it was probably a bit old fashioned now, but yeah, that was a thing at one point.
I know. I think I don't know if I know I've had them growing up, but and then like herrings. I'd have herring, and then I do like fish, but I don't normally have fish for breakfast.
Probably more likely to be like smoked salmon now.
Yeah, that feels fancy. Exactly. Okay, so thyroid, like we said, we see it across the board. Thyroid issues. I've done like multiple episodes on thyroid health. So let's talk about the thyroid and why that matters for people that are trying to lose weight and you're like beating yourself up, and maybe your thyroid is, you have thyroid dysfunction.
Well, the thyroid is like the master gland when it comes to your metabolism. So when you're trying to lose weight, first of all, you want to make sure that you are kind of like fat adapted and you are able to burn fat efficiently. And what we were talking about earlier with making sure that you're well nourished is really important for that. But your thyroid controls the speed at which that happens. So the speed of everything that happens in your body and the speed of all the chemical reactions in all your cells, including fat burning. So thyroid is really, really important for weight management. And one of the big problems is that the typical tests that you have done at the doctors, like here, it's only really TSH that they measure. Sometimes, if you're lucky, they might measure free T4, but they can be completely normal. And then when we do a more detailed test, we can see that actually the other hormones, your 3T3 can be on the floor. The thyroid antibodies can be really elevated. And, those are things that are going to interfere with how your thyroid hormone is behaving in your body and how fast your metabolism is. And, it's something that your doctors will tell you that it's all normal. You don't need to worry about it. It's not the thyroid, but actually it could be the thyroid. We just need to look at it in much more detail. And then also I see a lot of people who have had a thyroid problem identified by their doctor, been medicated, and then been told, yep, it's fine. Your T4 is in that range where we want it to be, but they're still having all the problems. And then again, when we run more detailed testing, we're finding that their T3 is still on the floor. So they're not converting that medication or their thyroid hormone into the T3, which is actually the more active hormone. So your body isn't able to do the conversion, which is, not uncommon, or it might be that it can't do it very efficiently, then you're not going to be any better off for taking your medication. It's not that you should stop your medication, but it hasn't solved the underlying issue. And then if that is a problem, you're not converting properly, then we want to be asking why. And that can be, to do with what's going on in your gut. It can be to do with your liver. It can be to do with stress or deficiencies. So we have to start looking a bit deeper as to what's actually going on here. If you've been told that your thyroid's normal, but you're still getting all the symptoms, then don't accept that as fact, because there could be so much more going on.
Exactly. If you're trying to conceive and you're having a problem losing weight and you're told your thyroid is normal, that just because it's normal doesn't mean it's optimal. We see it across the board, like either Hashimoto's or Graves or subclinical thyroid issues, liver or the gut, or hypothyroidism. People are taking medication. Maybe they've gone to see their REI. They've been told to get the TSH below 2. No one's looked at the full panel, and you just end up running around. You're like, wait a minute, my skin's dry, my hair is falling out, I can't lose weight, I'm exhausted, but hey, my thyroid's normal. No. No. Yeah,
Almost
that's
certainly
like,
not.
yeah, like medical gaslighting, right? We're like, but I think something's wrong. No, you're totally fine. Don't worry about it. No, that's where you need to be like empowered with information and being able to look at that. So I have a free thyroid guide they can check out too. That's got all the different reference ranges for functional labs, so you can see what's been missed and what are those optimal levels. And then what are you seeing for, what about heavy metals or other toxins? What's showing up there for you?
Yeah, toxic load is definitely something that we factor in. It's not something that we test for very often, because it's something that we often feel that there's other tests that are kind of more important to do first. And over here in the UK, people aren't very used to paying for their healthcare. So, we kind of have to be quite selective with the tests that we use. But we do assess toxic load through organic acids, and we often see that it is elevated. And, again, a lot of people have their standard blood test done and are told that liver function is normal, but just because your liver is healthy doesn't mean that it's actually efficiently getting rid of the toxins in your body. And, if your toxic load is high, that's going to be having a huge impact on your weight management because, firstly, the toxins can be something that can disrupt your hormones. So a lot of toxins are what we would call xenoestrogens, and that they are mimicking estrogen and they can disrupt the way that your estrogen behaves in your body. And your body has to eliminate those estrogens via the liver, via the same pathways that it would your normal estrogens. So that can mean that either the toxins are getting recirculated around your body, which you don't want, or your own estrogens are not being detoxed properly and being recirculated, which we don't want either. So that toxic load can cause disruption in that way. But also, one of the ways that our body protects itself from a high toxic load is by upregulating fat storage, because we store our toxins in our fat to protect ourselves from them. So, if you find that you're either not losing weight, or if you start trying to lose weight and then it very quickly plateaus, it could be that your toxic load is fairly high, because as you start releasing fat stores, you're releasing those stored toxins. Your liver has a really high toxic burden to deal with, and your body compensates by stopping fat burning or even trying to store fat to get those toxins out of circulation, which is where they can cause damage.
Yeah, like similar to we like a hair tissue mineral analysis test, and it's not about like similar, right? To bring all these tests in all at once, and you're like overwhelmed with testing. I'm in Canada. We've got a lot, couples in Canada we work with, but States, UK, like all over the world. Even though in Canada we have this supposed free healthcare, it doesn't mean it's any good.
Yeah.
Obviously, if there's a critical issue, you're thankful for it, so you're not paying like hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket. So we're thankful for that piece. Obviously, we pay taxes for this, but then to have any kind of anything from an autoimmune issue or even from a fertility standpoint, being able to you sometimes, well, not sometimes, you need to pay out of pocket for good healthcare, and testing can be part of that. Otherwise, you're just going to be twirling around doing all these different generalized recommendations, going, okay, I tried that. Well, maybe you didn't go deep enough on it and you missed something. That's why like having a guide, having someone, help you to fast track it is key. And yeah, so the hair tissue testing we do, you can, you see the heavy metals and also the nutrient and deficiencies. And that one's like a cheapie. It's like $80. Okay. What are you seeing? See so many people that we work with are like their sleep is just dysregulated, where they're just got insomnia, or they have a hard time falling asleep, or they wake up and they're exhausted, or they're waking up in the middle of the night, like, around 2 or 3 and can't get back to sleep, and they're pacing. Obviously there could be situational things going on, but this thing is going on for years for a lot of people. And they've taken all these sleep aids. And so how does that, impact someone who's on the weight loss journey and the fertility journey, and they're like, oh my goodness, my sleep is horrible, plus I can't shift weight? Like, what do you see in there?
Such a strong correlation between poor sleep and difficulty losing weight. And it's really interesting because sometimes I'll have clients who are ticking along nicely, making steady progress, feeling really good. And then they'll come back one week and they'll be like, oh my God, I haven't lost weight for a few weeks and I haven't changed anything. I don't know what's going on. And then when we look at it, the only thing that's changed is that they've had a bad week or so of sleep. Because of whatever's going on for them. And that, just that disrupted sleep in itself, it doesn't have to be majorly disrupted. It could just be that they're not getting quite enough of it. That can be enough to just stop fat burning in its tracks, because it has such a big knock-on effect on all of your hormones, the levels of inflammation in your body as well. So sleep is massive, and it's one of the things that people are the least reluctant to acknowledge that it's a big factor. I think because for a lot of people, it's very difficult to change your habits, particularly if you've got young children, or if you are a shift worker, or if you have a very full-on job, or lots of other people and things that require you, to be constantly busy. It's very, very difficult to adjust those habits. And so often it's the thing that people put the least kind of emphasis on when they're looking at their health journey. But so often it's the thing that they need to focus on the most, because if you can just get your sleep better, it makes everything else easier, because you not only feel better because you've got more energy and you're better rested, it makes you more emotionally resilient because you're not tired, and because your stress hormones are lower, it makes it easier to regulate your blood sugars. It makes your thyroid run better. So often I'm trying to get clients to focus on their sleep as a top priority, and, absolutely discourage getting up an hour early to go to the gym if they're not hitting at least 7 hours of sleep per night.
And what are your go-to tips for someone that's got struggling with sleep? What are you telling them?
I think, first of all, we always think about the bedtime routine, but one of the most important things is the wake routine as well. And getting some daylight as early as possible after waking really helps to kind of set your circadian rhythm. So, even if it's a gloomy day, just getting outside and being exposed to some daylight, what it does is it helps to clear the melatonin from your brain. That helps you to make serotonin more efficiently. And that helps you to feel better during the day, but it also makes you more efficient at producing the melatonin in the evening. So melatonin, being your sleepy hormone, is really, really important to help you feel tired at the right times and getting to a deep and restful sleep. So getting some daylight first thing in the morning, really important. And then in the evenings, things like being really mindful of your exposure to artificial light and blue light, using devices and phones and TVs and all those sorts of things. The blue light is very disruptive to our production of melatonin. It's been shown to raise blood sugars, and even cause inflammation through raising your stress hormones. So trying to have a good hour, if not 2 hours before your bedtime, where you are taking steps to really minimize your exposure to artificial light and blue light, which could be, turning on blue light filters on phones, wearing blue blocker glasses, turning down the indoor lighting as much as possible. That can make a huge difference. And I think particularly trying not to be stuck to your phone, because that is something that's so close to your face. And we're getting all those dopamine hits constantly when we're scrolling. But it doesn't set us up for good sleep.
Yeah, charging the phone outside the bedroom. Put it somewhere else where you're like, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got the little blue light blocking glasses too, which I guess I read with my e-reader, but I put those on, and I do have some of those red bulbs that I have throughout the house too. Although when it's so dark, I'm just like, geez, I'm going to wipe out. But and then you can have the ones for the day, the yellow ones to help with the stuff you get from your laptop and your computer.
Mm-hmm.
I also like to do like a little spray of like magnesium on my feet. That can be good too. If you get those like cramps and leg cramps, and obviously taking a magnesium supplement is really good to help with that. But
Epsom salt baths as well to get your magnesium. Really great thing to do.
A while ago, I did one of those float tanks, and
amazing,
filled with magnesium salts or Epsom salts, I guess. And that was like a coma for sleeping. It was bye. Didn't even I have a good sleep anyways, but that was like another level. So
was it like one of those sensory deprivation ones?
Yeah, where you're there. It was kind of like I kept floundering around because I thought I was drowning. I'm like, because they want you to put your head in there. I'm like, oh, just release, and then you kind of relax and you're fine. But yeah, really good sleep after that. It was good.
Oh wow, amazing.
Yeah. And what about the emotions around weight loss? There's a lot of obviously there's a body positive movement and things like that, of not to beat ourselves up. I also think the body positive thing, but then with that has come that it's normalizing to be overweight, which is not good for your health. So I don't think anyone should ever beat themselves up because they're overweight. That doesn't help anything for saying unkind things to yourself. And, we definitely want to love ourselves, but then we also want to recognize that maybe there's a physiological reason that, that we're carrying extra weight, and how can we look at that and get support on that? But it doesn't mean that someone who's, is carrying extra, like all this extra weight is not going to, that's not impacting their health. And in this case, impacting their fertility and all sorts of, facets of their body. So I feel like that movement is a little bit skewed on kind of what they're talking about. Any thoughts on the emotions and thoughts on that piece?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there's a difference between losing weight because you hate yourself and losing weight because you love yourself. And, the typical diet culture teaches us that, carrying extra weight is shameful and, we should lose weight so that we can be loved and so that we're worthy. But actually, if you flip it on its head and you focus on, accepting yourself as you are and focusing on loving yourself and taking steps to lose weight or be healthier or nourish yourself because you are worthy, because you are, lovable and you love yourself and you want to do the best for yourself, then it's a very different experience of going through that journey of weight loss. And yeah, I think that that body positive movement, while overall it is a really good thing, I think that um, there's a difference between accepting yourself as you are and actually taking action to make yourself healthier because you love yourself.
Yeah, and I think also this is coming like the only time after I had my daughter, so I had some extra weight, maybe like 30 or 40 pounds, and I was like, what's this doing here? Because I've never had issues with my weight. Obviously, my issue was fertility. I remember it's like when I was pregnant, sitting on the edge of the bed with my husband, the freaking bed flipped up, and I'm like, oh my god, what's happened? And so extra weight, and I was starving with her. Geez, I was eating like a pig. And then afterwards, I was, decided to do that. This was like years, like she's 22. So like I had Weight Watchers, like wouldn't recommend that for anybody, but did that and then lost some weight. But I guess for people that, weight has not been my thing to deal with. So for me, it's been fertility and then my health. And to me, to look at this, like people come to us with weight issues, we're like, let's just look at your health biomarkers and your thyroid and your blood sugar and your stress, like your cortisol levels, like all of that piece. And then when you start to see those markers improve, then the weight starts to come off. And instead of saying, I got to come in to like lose weight is kind of how we look at it, that it's a good side effect where you eating a diet that's right for you, that working on your health and so you feel good and not like directly attacking it. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, definitely. I always find that the people that I work with who can focus on their overall well-being, their energy levels and what it is they want their life to be like in terms of, being pain-free and being able to do stuff with the kids or, age well. Um, all of those things are so much more motivating in the long term than just trying to fit into a size 12 or whatever. Um, and so often women come into my program very focused on weight. And then by a few months in, they're not even weighing themselves anymore because they realize that actually, firstly, mentally, they feel so much better when they're not obsessing over the scales. But secondly, they see better progress when they're not weighing themselves every day and thinking, oh my God, I gained 500 grams today or whatever. When you can let that go and start focusing on how you feel and how well you're nourishing your body, it makes it so much easier to stick with the process and see it through and see a proper transformation.
Exactly. Okay, so you've got a free masterclass here for the listeners. We'll have a link to that. So you get that at louisedigbynutrition.com/masterclass class -invite. What can they expect there?
So in that class, I go through the steps that I go through with my clients to help them to lose weight without dieting. And we talk about some of the things that can really inhibit weight loss and some of the things that can really accelerate weight loss. And it comes back to what we've been talking about today, getting your blood sugar sorted, making sure that your metabolism is properly supported and we're not down regulating our metabolism. And looking at how the body's interconnected and how stress and the gut and your sleep and all of these things come into play.
Awesome. Any final thoughts for us today, Louise?
No, I don't think so. I think we've done a bit of a whirlwind tour of kind of my world, and hopefully it's been really interesting for everyone.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you very much. And definitely check out the masterclass there from Louise. Where can they find you on Instagram?
Just search at Louise Digby Nutrition.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.